Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom here with Next TMT Talks and our midweek check-in with our partners over at Media Play News. Massive World Cup ratings are setting off what looks like it's going to be a gigantic bidding war for 2030 and 2034 rights. Who knew Americans love football, that other kind of football? Netflix is facing a sea change in the kinds of programming it does. It's getting smaller because that's what people want now. Attention spans are overrated. Sun Valley kicks off the Mogul meetings up in Idaho. If they're smart, they'll take a hike instead of taking a meeting. Emmy nominations are once again out as of today. Taylor Sheridan, once again, is no doubt very unhappy and riding his horse somewhere because they didn't get much. Hacks continues to roll up, etc. Over in the game business, Xbox goes through the most consequential reset of its existence. SpaceX wants to send up 100,000 satellites into the sky. And finally, let's just pour one out for Dish. Now in bankruptcy, and we are just not so sure it's coming out. So, Daniel, let's start with the Netflix changes. What are you seeing?
Well, first, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Looper Insights, out with a new report and an interactive tool that lets those in the CTV business, connected TV, understand how their content is being merchandised on a global level a little better. It's a black box, and Looper wants to help its clients understand it better. So
make it at least a dark gray box, right?
Oh, it's pretty dark, pretty black.
Yeah. So make it like a charcoal box instead of a black
We really
box.
need a designer to settle this, don't we?
Yes.
Getting on to matters at hand, Netflix. So a couple of news items this week. Report in Bloomberg suggesting that folks aren't coming back for original series. They'll watch one season of One Piece.
They'll watch one season of One Piece. If they named it Two Piece, would they watch two seasons, or is this just a systemic thing that's really hitting everything? It's like you saw that first one, it was great. Beef, I guess, is also
Beef was the big
beef?
decliner. It was like 70% from 1 to 2.
But then that was to some extent. But Beef possibly is a little unusual because it's a whole different cast, right? Each season is a new cast, so maybe that's not as applicable as some of the others. But they've been making their bones off of series, right?
Well, it juxtaposed against other news. Netflix signed a deal with publishers, including Penske Media out here on the West Coast, Condé Nast, People, BuzzFeed Studios, which is now owned by Byron Allen, to publish 3 to 20-minute short lifestyle entertainment news shorts, basically. The opposite from what you traditionally associate with being Netflix shows, bingeable series. Sarah Perez in TechCrunch, who I like to read, had a series of articles this week suggesting that the binge era that Netflix itself invented is, in fact, over, and it's moved on. Not only is it been proven that this idea of dropping all the shows at one time doesn't work on an optimal level. I think Netflix even concedes that because they'll do 4 and 4, a show like Bridgerton. Also, these huge spans of time between series are also an issue. I know Three Body Problem.
I think that's a bigger issue. I got to tell you, I think that's a bigger issue than the.
It's definitely for me. Three Body Problem rocked my world in March of 2024. We're already past 2 years since I last saw it. Interest is waning. It's hard to sustain enthusiasm for something that you saw 3 years ago.
Dimly remembered, far long ago time. There's several things that are going on. It's interesting, and then they're turning. I have to say, part of this though, because you mentioned deals with Penske Media as well as these others, feels a lot like when I worked for Penske Media 15 years ago now, and they did a deal to do video for this kind of up and coming video site called YouTube. And so what he had then, he eventually bought Variety, but even before that, they had Deadline and some other stuff, and they had a separate video unit that was doing video that they were paid $1 million to do a year's worth of stuff for all these different companies, and then they re-upped the $100 million to another 100 outlets, including Penske, for a second time. But this feels kind of like that, like this sort of shift in viewing
Well,
patterns and viewing opportunities.
that's the biggest, I think. I mean, the dynamics we mentioned earlier aren't wrong. They factor in, but I think that's the biggest factor. Netflix isn't competing with premium SVODs anymore in traditional TV. It's competing with all these fast emerging platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Reels and all the microdrama platforms.
Yeah,
And they're experimenting now. I think this counts as an experiment. It can't cost a whole lot. I think if Netflix really likes it, they'll produce it themselves. But I think this is
sure.
a recognition that there's a problem here and they have to sort of adjust to it.
Well, if you look
I
at
don't
their,
know if they love it.
but if you look at their share price, it is down from, God, it was what, 125 or something like that. And now it's down around 72, 73. It has settled, shall we say. And so clearly there's some pressure there because the street thinks something's going on here. And you have things like Instagram TV coming, and we'll see what that ends up being. But basically, that's Instagram creating a presence on connected TVs that doesn't feel that different from what YouTube does, right? So, kind of more of the same. And all
There
that's
was a
different than what they spend, 15 million making a show on.
Well, I had some more to say about that, but I will say, I crunched the data that sort of started this engagement ball of wax in January. Netflix released their second half of 2025 numbers, a big spreadsheet full of how many hours viewed, how many views all their shows or most of their shows generating most of their viewership did. And if you compared 2024 to 2025, you found that engagement only increased 1.74%, or hours viewed, I should say, and subscribers increased like 7.79%. So you do the math, or at least one of the equity research firms did, and it's an 8% drop in engagement. The audience is expanding much faster than the engagement is. It's that 8% figure has gained some steam. What's interesting is I crunched the numbers from 2025 and found a 34% engagement drop. The expansion of the user base is much bigger from beginning of 2023 to the end of 2025. And I think it was close to 40%, while engagement increase hours viewed is only like 6% and change. So it's pretty staggering.
Yeah, that feels like, well, it's interesting to think about because there's all this conversation about Netflix should buy NBC Universal. A, probably not going to be A, wanting to be bought, or B, available to be bought for 2 or 3 years. But I don't think that solves the problems you're talking about in any way whatsoever, except for the live sports rights that they have.
Well, I heard it said that buying the zest to buy Warner Brothers all of a sudden was driven by that kind of concern that they needed to
Mhm.
find more content for their library that will draw more people to the platform. I'm not sure I
Maybe
buy it either.
they could just buy the Bravo verse and be done with it. How's that?
I keep coming back to something that Adam Lewinson at Tubi said to
Mhm.
me a little over a year ago. I was interviewing him, and he talked about how they program for individual viewer taste. It's a technology game as much as a content game. It's all wrapped around AI-driven search and discovery, and it's helping people find a rabbit hole, meaning they're not sure what they want to watch. We're not going to the process of discovery isn't like you build all these expensive shows and you hope people discover them. It's like you just kind of find as much content as you can and try to
Right. But
match the right content with.
yeah, he
It's a
talked about
social.
that.
It's
Yeah,
social
but
engineering.
he talked about that this year at Stream TV. He was
Mhm.
on stage. He's chief content officer, has been for 7, 8, 9 years now, a long time. But he talked about how you get a set of new stuff that kind of grabs people's eyes, but then you need to have a deep pool of other vaguely related stuff that they can go to. He calls them rabbit holes. They can go down the rabbit hole. Well, that's interesting as an approach where you just keep lining the rabbit hole with more relatively related old stuff that you can get relatively cheap. You get the rights to it relatively cheap. But some new stuff, they actually produce some new stuff. They produced a show tied to the World Cup because Fox has the World Cup rights for the English language in the United States, which, by the way, are doing great and have set off what looks like is going to be a mammoth bidding war. We'll see who actually ponies up. But, it's a long list of organizations that may be interested, including NBC Universal and definitely Fox, trying to hold
Well,
on to
those USA Belgium numbers are pretty staggering. I mean, what was
it.
it, 40
Yeah,
million viewers? That's an
right,
impressive number. I mean, it's
right.
not the Super Bowl, but what else in sports does that kind of number? I mean, the NBA Finals did a
40
high watermark,
million. Let's just be clear, 40 million for a butt kicking. Okay.
right?
Let's just clarify that one wasn't close. So go USA. But boy, they got their butts handed to them after the intercession of our only
I
president.
gotta say,
And
I'm no supporter of the president. I think I've made that known, but having that kind of aura, having our government at the highest levels interfere with the decision to suspend our best player. I mean, it may not be fair or not, but I don't think I want to use that card for that. And it felt like, okay, great, interject this controversial decision and see what it does to the focus and the morale of the players.
yeah, well, use the red card, actually, to use that. But I mean, it's like it was an interesting. And let's just say after he went to the Knicks game, and it's the only game they lost out of their last 14 they played, he's starting to get the. It was that little movie years ago called The Cooler about the guy who had some impact on hot gamblers by cooling them off. Don Trump is the
Yeah.
cooler for
I
prominent
don't think it's just anecdotal.
sports.
I think there's a real kind of attitudinal impact on everybody in the pavilion, everybody
Mm.
on the field, or at least it suddenly turns things into David and Goliath stories, and it has to have some level of inspiration. I don't know that we have that talent discrepancy with Belgium. I think they probably have a little more of it. And
No,
I
they have
don't think we
more.
need it. Yeah.
They were a top 6 or 7 ranked team by FIFA, and we were not. We were down closer to 20, if I recall.
So not a terrible
Belgium
performance, but
is older. Yeah,
imagine what the ratings would have been if we advanced past Belgium. You get to that.
yeah. To
Was that
Spain,
the quarter?
which is
Is that the
like,
quarterfinal, or is that like? Are you at 8 at that point? Would
well, 8 is quarterfinals. Do the
right? That
math.
so they would have advanced to the quarterfinals if they'd won that game, right?
Yeah, and they would have
Right.
played against Spain, and that could have been ugly. But it doesn't matter because they didn't get through the intercession of the president. It felt like soccer karma catching up. We'll see if soccer karma catches up with Fox. They are going to face off against possibly, you know, Google, Amazon, Apple, which has MLS, maybe Netflix, which is certainly getting into some sports and likes these things that are sort of confined like this, where they can go global, but this would be U.S. rights. Or interestingly enough, I think Gianni Infantino is many not great things, but he is his own kind of genius in terms of slipping around. They're going to unify the English language and Spanish language rights this time around, and they could draw a couple $1 billion for just the U.S. rights plus everything else around the world, which would be quite a lot more than this time around. So it'll be really
Yes,
interesting to see what happens.
how much does NBC pay for the Olympics per rotation?
It's kind of hard to piece it out that way. I mean, they bought them, I believe, through 2034. They paid something like 15 or 18 billion, something like that. I don't remember. It's been too long since those numbers came out because they basically went out and said,
Right.
we're going to buy the whole boat from now for the next decade, winter and summer.
Right.
Go, you know, and they've done a great job. And I suspect if they have the revenue and they're spun off or they're whatever they're going to be, that might get in the way of any ambition they have. But it certainly fits in with their huge investments in the NBA, NFL, Olympics to try to pick up these rights as well. So it would make sense.
It seems
But
like Verizon is a global technology brand that bought into it. It seems like that's something if you're Apple or Google or Amazon even, that you'd want to pursue and pry away from Fox.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean, Apple feels like the most obvious one, but the real issue for Fox is, yeah, they're going to go spend about as much as their market capitalization to buy Roku in a deal that everybody thinks makes sense, right?
Right.
But do they have a spare, I don't know, 2 billion laying around for this as well? Yeah, that might be tough
That's
to
a good
pull off.
question.
It'll be interesting to see if they can cadge the cash. Yeah. Stay
So
tuned. That one could be really the
go.
most fun in the World Cup after we decide in the next week who's the world champion. So
So what's going on for the
anyway,
women's rights? That's happening. That tournament's scheduled for next year, right?
I thought it was 2 years, but I have not been following the women's rights closely. They have
Okay.
certainly risen in value a great deal in this country since the U.S. team is far more competitive, to put it mildly. They've actually
They've
won
won
it a
3
couple of
cups, I think,
times.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
They've won it 3
yeah,
times.
2 or 3. Yeah, they're one of the powers. And, it's interesting to see Julie Foudy and some of the other stars from those older teams now being on air or being on ads. Speaking of which, is there an ad in the World Cup that doesn't feature David Beckham? Is there a single
Yeah.
one? I just want to know, because I don't think they missed him. Any of those big brands, I don't think he's missed any of them. I mean, it's like, oh, here he is again. Here's Beck. And no knock on Beck. He's a very engaging, very handsome fellow. He's done great. He was a fantastic player to watch. But
He's
Jesus,
estranged from his
it's like,
son, David. Don't you read the
well,
gossip?
that happens. He's about as omnipresent in soccer as Peyton Manning is in NFL football. And that's saying something.
Right.
I mean, he's like the Peyton Manning of
Yeah, he's
American soccer.
well known, like you said,
Yeah.
remembered fondly by multiple continents and probably easy to work with on set, churns
Yeah.
out the commercials. But yeah, I've seen more
He
than a few
he he does.
Horizon spots with him.
Like if you get the wrong, I mean, he's got a McDonald's, he's got Adidas. I mean, it's you could like have a whole ad block of ads with Beckham doing a cameo in them. I mean, it's nuts. Anyway, but lots
I
of
will
money
say
there.
that
They're
if Mr. Messi holds on and wins this thing, I think he's going to be the GOAT. Advertising will be very much apparent from now on. I don't think there's anybody will
but
argue with it.
but the thing is, he already won one. He's already won 8 golden boots. I mean, his legacy is secure. But you
Dude
notice
is
he does
39, 40.
not 39. He does not do speaking roles in these ads. You see him kind of wander through and smile and do all the. That's not what he's doing. Beckham talks. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Messi speaks English. I don't know, but he does not do speaking roles in English language ads. I know that. So unless he's kind of floating through and it's like, oh, there's Messi. He's like one of the royalty, that kind of thing. So it's a little different dynamic. He is not like Mike, as they say. But speaking of lots of money, there's a bunch of
Yep.
moguls hanging out in the mountains of Idaho trying to figure out what dumbass idea they can come up with this week to outstrip some of the worst deals in the history of
Yeah.
media mergers and acquisitions.
People are always asking me, "You going to Sun Valley?" I think we just got back from Denver a few weeks ago. It just felt like a lot. I skipped it. I don't know about you. It looks like maybe you didn't get an invite.
I did not get an invite,
Well,
but if I was going to get invited, it would not be to go there and be walled off into one particular like dining area of a separate restaurant. If I was going to go somewhere with like hills and stuff, I'd go like where my backdrop is, which is the Golfo Liguria by Rancho Santa Margarita in Portofino.
okay.
This is actually much
Uh,
nicer. And you don't have to
before
sit there waiting for some mogul to decide to stop by and give you useless gossip before he goes and announces a deal he shouldn't have done. And it's always a
my
he.
old Rhode
So
Island Red colleague, Brent Lang, who now works for, we worked together at the Wrap. He now works for Variety, and he wrote about Sun Valley this week. And his lead was, it's not fair necessarily to blame what ails the media economy on the big shots visiting Sun Valley this week. Well, it's a good place to start. Something along
good
those
place
lines.
to
I thought that
start.
was really funny. And he kind
Yeah.
of
Well,
details
and
the long
yeah.
history of big deals there. And they're not accretive. It's a bad legacy.
Well, and
You
it's
wrote this, like,
possible, and so I just want to throw out there, though, it is possible that very few media deals, no matter where they have been spawned, have been accretive. It's possible.
right.
Now, he mentioned the one that Tom Rogers, who was the first NBC cable president and went on to be CEO of TiVo and founded CNBC, he's still tied up with Versant. And he comes on CNBC once in a while and he said, one of the ones that did work out was Google buying YouTube at a time
Right.
when YouTube had virtually no revenue. It was 18 months old, virtually no revenue. They paid 1.65 billion and people went, "Huh?" And now analysts estimate if it were a separate company, it'd have a market value around $500 billion. We're talking some
Yeah, we talked about this
RO
not
with the
long ago. Disney had a crack at it, and so did others. And lo
now,
and behold,
but
it was Google's.
But it made sense for Google because they could wrap their search around it and wrap their ads around it and feed those into very specific things. And now we see how that's working out. It is the most viewed video site in the universe, at least this side of Alpha Centauri. They've got some really hot shows up there in Alpha Centauri. There's a lot of other ideas. I mean, a lot of other ideas that turned out really badly, like Verizon buying Yahoo. I was like, why? Or the much worse idea, the worst idea of all, Time Warner and AOL. That came from there. So
Oh, a
Rogers,
bad idea.
yeah, that's pretty epic. And in a minor irony, the NBC Universal Comcast deal came out of that.
That's
So
right.
now they're unwinding it. So that was another one that was not terrible, but it certainly didn't build anything. But all that being said,
Keep
Rogers had a
these
really good
guys
point.
together with puffy jackets and
Puffy
fleece vests,
jackets
and
and thin oxygen, the high mountain air, and all sense goes away. But Rogers had a really good point. He says, "Look, this is not the year to be doing a deal." He says AI has
right.
created so much uncertainty, and you talk about it with the Netflix stuff. There is so much uncertainty about what's working, how it's going to work, how it's going to get created and distributed and marketed, and all the rest. That buying something for a few tens of billions of dollars, maybe not the year. Maybe just take a hike. How about just taking a hike? It's a nice place to go hiking. Let's do that and not buy something
Yeah,
this year. Just
maybe split
stick
your
your wallet
company
back in
and,
your pocket.
keep your options open. Spin something off.
There
It's
you
just
go. Get smaller, more agile, or whatever we're
exactly.
doing.
You know,
Speaking of getting smaller, Xbox is going through the most significant restructuring in its history, according to its newish president. She's Sharp Cook, who used to run the AI units at Microsoft. So, she's carrying some serious processing power between her ears, but she's got some
high
serious,
IQ. High IQ, as the president would say.
very high IQ. She is a very stable genius, but, you know, she's got a lot of stuff to fix. And she set a goal that is both admirable and are you nuts? She wants to have 1 billion people a day interacting with Xbox related
Well,
game stuff. 1 billion people
if
a
I'm wrong,
day.
5,600 employees received
No. Well,
total in Microsoft wide, and over 3,000
Microsoft wide.
in the Xbox unit.
Well, 1,600 went out the door in the last week, but another 1,600 will go over the next year. So that's
Gotcha.
3,200. And I thought it was 4,800. But the point being that Microsoft is trying to reset itself in multiple ways because this AI thing complicates stuff for them in a lot of areas also. So they're trying to build their company for the future. I think what's really interesting is on all the moves that the CEO of Xbox, all her moves are fine to staunch the bleeding. They're spinning off 4 or 5 studios, some of which will take games with them and create them as independents, etc. They're going to focus more, and this is going to sound very familiar if you're a Hollywood trade reporter, going to focus on more of the big franchises and take bigger swings and less of the quirky small things, you know? So less A24, more Superman.
Yeah, that's what when
basically.
Future PLC closed our division. They said, we're going to focus more on high impact initiatives, which meant taking other people's content and monetizing it. But go ahead. So if you take
Even in
out
publishing, it
3,000
sounds
employees,
familiar.
I read that, well, obviously the console, the hardware portion of it died in an era where, off the shelf processors in your can mimic anything. You don't need to buy disk anymore. You don't need to buy a console anymore. So they tried to stream their product essentially, and it just didn't work. That
Well, they tried to get to a cloud gaming. Amazon did the same thing. Google's tried the same thing. They've had Samsung
Sony?
has tried the same thing. Yeah, Sony's getting there. I mean, the news we put out over the weekend was they are turning their last game disc production facility, which is in Germany, into a micro optics facility for automobiles and stuff. So they're not going to be selling after 2028. They're not going to be selling
Right.
game discs. So they're getting out of that business. Many of the PlayStation 5s don't come with a disk drive. It's cheaper and you just download the stuff and they come fast enough. Our internet connections, our broadband connections are fast enough. So, but there are lots of people that have an affection for lining up at midnight outside the GameStop to get the latest version of Call of Duty. That's just not going to be a tradition going forward in the same way. But it's really interesting to see what's going to come next because I think that some of the same challenges that are hitting Netflix are hitting the game business. The kids these days, particularly the male kids these days, looking at gambling apps, looking at OnlyFans, looking at social media apps and dating apps. They're doing Robinhood and interactive brokers apps to do investing and crypto. Well, they're doing a lot more of those things, which are digital distractions of various sorts, some of them somewhat more valuable than others, as opposed to playing games. And
I
so
would
it's a
rather
problem about where you go.
my sons play first person shooters than deal with the manosphere and all its machinations.
Well, understandable that you might feel that way. I don't think that we can hold back the tide of history by ourselves. But I think that it is interesting to see as they try to reshape what Xbox is and say what has been one of the great brands of gaming over the last quarter century, what they might be able to do, if anything, because I just think the atmosphere that is impacting traditional Hollywood is impacting traditional game publishing also.
The
So,
people that buy the products think different than you and me. That's a problem. We need to.
well, they consume differently than old people and slightly less old people do.
Well, I mean, obviously, you had the rock and rollers and their, parents who listened to swing era music and were greatest generation folks.
Yeah.
Obviously different types of content, radical different departures, improvements in fidelity, color television as opposed to black and white television, an evolution of consumption habits based on evolving technology and evolving style. But I don't know that I've ever seen just like dramatically different taste in everything. I mean, my
Yeah,
20-year-old,
but it's you as you harumph,
I'm
don't
not
forget.
complaining. You're right. There's no changing it. It's only constant is change.
Yeah,
It's coming,
yeah.
and I don't lament it. But I'm just saying, has and change is the only constant. Every generation experiences it. But I guess what I'm asking is, has there ever been such a dramatic transformation between, let's say, Gen X and Gen Z? I mean, what these kids do is totally different from what we did. We went out more. We could go out more. We thought we faced economic and global peril. These kids face it on a level that I can't even imagine. There's social pressure on the internet, social temptation, and possibilities that I can't imagine. It's an alien world, I think, in some respects, dramatically different than any other comparison before.
Absolutely, but I mean, also don't forget that the technology changed dramatically generation to generation. It's not just, "Oh, we got color TV. Oh, we got cable." It's
Right.
now you get specific things based on your own expressed interests, and the way you manifest that is tracked in different ways on different platforms, targeted to you on a daily basis. And it remembers and keeps feeding you more of the things you like. This is not, oh, there's 3 networks and Love American Style is on ABC, and that's less obnoxious somehow than the 2 crappy shows that are on the other 2 networks. So let's watch that or stare at the wall. This is not that era. So, yes, things have changed in a dramatic way. So all of a sudden, we're getting fed, good and bad, stuff we care about, good and bad.
Debtors and strikes, Dave. So what
Yeah.
else we got on our conveyor belt of joy that
Oh, speaking of
Emmys?
gutters and strikes, Emmys. Yeah, Taylor Hackford, your boy. Taylor Sheridan, not Hackford. Taylor Hackford, lovely fellow. I've interviewed him a couple times. Taylor Sheridan, he once complimented me for the way that I moderated a panel at the American French Film Festival, for which he is served on the board as chairman. But I think
Taylor
he's a fine
Hackford or
fellow.
Taylor Sheridan?
Taylor Hackford,
Oh.
officer and a gentleman, etc. Taylor Sheridan may put out 4 million shows, but not getting much love from the Emmy crowd, which tends to do the same thing. I mean, even though they mix up the way the voting happens, there's 16, 17, 18,000 members of the TV Academy, and
Yeah.
there's a few big categories everybody votes on, but then there's lots of categories each peer group votes on solely. And despite all that, they tend to reward the same shows over and over again for a long time after those
They do.
shows were. I mean, you want to talk about an issue with Netflix and series return. I mean, how do the Emmy people, they keep coming back to the same shows when no one else is still watching them? It's really crazy. Anyway.
On a minute-by-minute basis, Hacks, which I don't know how many how many nominations today?
25 or 24, I can't remember. It was one of the 2
It's
big
a good
ones.
show. It's
Yeah.
well acted.
They wrapped
it's
it up.
well
They
written.
wrapped it up nice. They wrapped it up nicely, sent it off on its merry, love story kind of way. Well, unconventional, not love story, but it's
Back
mother
at
daughter.
the Variety Specials desk, some of the people that I used to want to throw coffee cups at used to talk about quality television. And they had a point. The level of stuff we saw on Soprano, HBO, Sopranos, etc., was heads and tails above a lot of things in terms of sophistication of audience, quality of writing, actors, the basic story. The audience and the stories were just better. But I would test, Taylor Sheridan's a volume shooter, and some of the stuff he's turned out has elicited pretty good performances. I think of the young woman who played in 1889. It was a little bit melodramatic and caked on, but so is The Pit. I think out of all the television, the dude and all the great actors that he has on his shows, a lot of it's melodramatic tripe, but some of it's pretty good. I think the fact that he can't even scratch is not a great look for the TV Academy. Makes him look out of step. This guy's producing a lot of viewership, a ton of it.
Right. People do tune back in to watch him. I agree. And it is, as you noted in passing, I mean, he's sort of the full employment act for cool actors who've been at it for 25 or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. I mean, he's, Helen Mirren and Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer and on. Great actors who've been doing stuff for a long time and maybe don't even get the gigs they used to get. And he puts them up there. He's
junketing right now. I don't know what he's out there promoting, but I guess it's Emmy time, so he's out there. I've seen a couple of things.
Oh, yeah.
I know TMZ ambushed him, and he was really gracious to the reporter. I thought that was impressive. But in an interview, he talks about New York. They shot some of his last series. What was it called again with Michelle Pfeiffer? That
Monarch, Majesty. It wasn't Monarch. That's the Godzilla show. The Madison. I knew it was an M.
And his comment was, well, New York's great, but L.A., he's really got a hard on. He had a bad time here, and he just won't let it go. So he's a big square job guy.
Yeah,
I'm
far be it for
overmatched
me to
against him.
complain. Far be it for me to diss
if he
anybody with a
sees me
square jaw.
in a parking lot at a Whole Foods, so we'll fight him.
Okay. Don't think it'll go well for you, but go for it, you know?
Hey,
So
listen, I'm
he's
like,
probably packing.
here in LA, no conceal and carry, to my knowledge.
Well, actually, you can get a concealed weapon permit. It's just a
That should be
pain
the
in the
headline. Dan
ass.
Frankel challenged. I'm kidding. I'm not a violent
To
man.
a duel at high noon in
It's the
Silver
reason why
Lake
I'm not a
at
violent person. That's how I
Mixville,
got this far.
Tom Mix's old cowboy studio.
Here's another question for you, Dave.
Um,
So
uh,
Paramount, which has like I didn't count the tallies, but I didn't see too much Paramount content nominated, is going against the number one generator of Emmy noms this year, HBO Max. I should say buying them. So it's a
it's
clash of
by
it.
him, yeah.
Say what you will
Yeah.
about David Zaslav, he has curated the brands on some level. He wanted to be a mogul, and he's come with that mindset. At times, it's been a little bit much, but the prestige is still there, both cinematically and with the TV shows. And it's
Actually,
not
I want to
important.
get clear on the verb you used because you said he curated. He bought the companies, he stripped them down. He was smart enough
I said,
not to
shut
fire
up, Stuart.
Casey Bloys, who's the guy running HBO. But I remember talking, boy, they're getting rid of these guys. At some point, are they going to, like run out? They're going to have a thin bench because they keep pumping out shows. At some point, that's going to come back and bite them in the butt.
All
And
right.
it
He's an
may still
empty
do that.
suit who's made some decent creative decisions in terms of delegation.
No,
You accept that?
that's not even a creative decision. That's just an HR decision. He didn't fire the guy who was already there and left him in place to do the thing that gives him prestige. I don't think that's a creative decision. That's an HR decision.
Fine. All right. Let's just put it this way. I think in terms of quality television, HBO Max.
Is that how they said it when you were at Variety? Because
Oh
I
man,
don't
they come on.
recall.
One editor came back from Dreamgirls and said, "Made the hair on the back of my neck stand up." I love movies and TV shows, but give me a break. It was the daily. I took Dramamine every day just to get through that job. It was tough. I'm just not a. I came from type into the box and report what the executives say and try to get it right, as opposed to like fanboy out
Mm.
of this shit. It just wasn't. That's just how I got into it. Mm.
Right. Though obviously the fanboys won on that one too.
They
So
decisively.
the shift in critical insight, and my spouse is somebody who got 2 degrees in critical studies and was a film critic for The Village Voice and other places among her many jobs. And trust me, he's very good at criticizing,
Yeah, but the
you
Lex
know.
Reeds kind of got the.
Yeah. I mean, the guy that she worked with some other notables. So, but all those folks who were sort of an arm's length from this stuff and brought a lot of history, that's not going to happen now. And some of that wasn't bad. I mean, it got a little tiresome, the Lester Bangs of it all. The grumpy, antisocial, unwashed critic who finds the indie rock band and celebrates them and then sniffs that they've sold out when they actually want to get paid by somebody. That's an old story as opposed to the person who actually has an appreciation for an act, but maybe just doesn't savage them just routinely because they've sold out, because they're not quality or
So
whatever.
Emmys, HBO Max reclaims the title from Netflix, last
Uh,
year's nominee leader. Hacks was a big deal. The Pit was. Both shows are pretty good. Usual Suspects. What was on an Apple that I hadn't seen that generated a lot of heat? Do you remember?
shrinking got a lot of attention. Uh,
Same way with
Severance has gotten a lot of love.
Pluribus got a
They
love too, but they have a show.
Pluribus was the big one that I know you're a Gilligan. You're a Gilligan. I'm more of the captain, the skipper. But actually, I'm more the professor. I like the professor. I always liked the professor. But
Yeah,
you're a
give yourself.
Gilligan guy. No, I just who I liked on that show. Gilligan was, but you're a Vince Gilligan guy, so that makes you a Gilligan guy in general. But Pluribus did really well. They got the fourth most nominations, I think,
The
for a
Bear.
show no one understood.
That show.
Continuing comedy nominee
It's like
for
a music
reasons I never
video.
quite.
And listen to the music. And how you doing, Chef? Good, doing good.
No, it's not how you
There was
doing,
some good
Chef.
moments.
It's heard, Chef. But they don't
The
preen. They
Jamie Lee Curtis
anguish.
episode inspired.
They
They've had some good
anguish.
moments, but that show got way too much acclaim. And that, what was that actor's name again? The lead. He was in the Springsteen delivery.
Jeremy
Yeah,
Allen White.
that movie was really good. It was despite him. I saw it on a plane to stream TV. It was just, I really liked it. I think I went off how much I liked it in this podcast a few weeks ago. So I won't do it
You
again
may
to her.
have.
But
It's
but
for
damn,
the best. Well, there's a set of
anyway.
folks that find Jeremy Allen White very handsome. There's a funny bit in the 5th season where Ibrahim is rehearsing a conversation he needs to have with the character that Jeremy Allen White plays. He says, "I will not be intimidated by his blue eyes." Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. That's pretty.
Talk about, yeah.
Actually, that was
It's
actually
uneven.
kind of funny. It's kind of funny. 'Cause, I mean, that feels like comedy. Everything else is too intense to be funny. It's like, oh my God. But that
Yeah,
was
it's
fun.
based on its timing. You know, if it's 30 minutes, it's comedy. If it's an hour, it's a drama. Still kind of
Right.
hooked to that dog.
Pretty much.
So what else we got?
That's a TV Academy. These are related. SpaceX formally requests permission to launch. It's not a million. It's a mere 100,000 satellites. And at the same time, Dish has
Yeah, I
filed
think we're not going to
bankruptcy.
talk about Dish. So if you want to talk about something else,
No Dish on Dish.
well, I think was interesting. It was Diane Guvertz in Fierce Networks talked about how this meltdown of their 5G plan and all the chaos it created, it really isn't the current regime of the SEC's fault. It goes back to Ajit Pai in 2019, allowing
Another Trump nominee, but yes.
right, this idea that like Dish, based on its prior track record, would like successfully launch America's 4th 5G wireless network without putting a lot of people in bankruptcy was ill-conceived. And I thought that was a good column.
That's a good call. It is gentle to say it was ill-conceived. It's like, oh, you run a satellite TV show or operation. You can build a whole mobile network on the ground. Should be a piece of cake, right? Just buy up a bunch of spectrum for billions of dollars, create consumer marketing operation, and go. Do deals with Samsung and Apple, maybe make your own phone. Go. Piece of cake, Charlie.
So, in regard to Elon Musk and SpaceX and satellites, it's another turn of the screw. It basically amounts to that. We all know he wants to launch perhaps unsustainable amount of satellites into low Earth orbit and create a paradigm where his satellites handle our compute. Basically, all of our AI gets sent up to low Earth orbit, processed and sent back down to us, either through direct to satellite D2D communication, direct-to-device communication, or through traditional 5G wireless radios that take the signal and process it that way, or maybe to a dish in our home or whatever. But all the internet processing will be done in the coolness of space, solar powered. He believes in it. We've discussed it at length. Some people see him as P.T. Barnum. Some see him as a brilliant technologist. It might be in the middle. I don't want to diminish some of the things he's done and things like electric cars and the telecom he's building, but he's like, I can't quit Amazon as much as what Jeff Bezos does at times annoys me. It's too much a part of my household economy. And I think if from a government contracting standpoint and soon a consumer economy standpoint, Elon Musk is that way already too. And it scares me to see him this week. He did his usual misinformation stuff on X. There was the Patriot Front. They're parading through Washington, D.C. They didn't do anything violent or anything. It was a show of force. It was, or whatever. Drew a lot of attention in the media. There was a scene of an African-American woman on a train with these guys kind of in their masks in a kind of menacing way. It was disturbing press. And Elon Musk implied that it was an Antifa false flag movement, that it's set up by the far left. I think wasn't Latif, it was the Southern Poverty Law Center that
Yeah.
set this up, which is, that's not true.
They don't have that much money, dude. But anyway, I mean, this is not the only one he was rejecting. You'll note that he also was calling Nicholas Kristof a liar for going and specifically talking to people whose family died as a result of cuts in U.S. AI
right.
as a result of last year's Doge crap. And he's like, that's a dead lie. That's a lie. You're a liar. You're a liar. And it's like, that's all he's got. And it's like, Christoph says, I talked to this person whose son died, and I talked to the doctors who were there when that
Right, he had the
happened
receipts,
because they couldn't get. He had the receipts, and the only thing that you know Musk could splutter about was, "You're a liar. You're a liar." And it's like, dude, he's not a liar. You have a generously loose connection with the truth in many areas, particularly when it makes you look bad. So.
Well, there's an ongoing discussion that maybe deserves some validity. I know Bill Maher is really into it. It's kind of a centrist discussion that, sure, what's happening in Washington is unacceptable in the broad sense, but the kind of totalitarian cancel culture of the left sort of put us in this
Hmm.
situation, and we
Hmm.
shouldn't go back there. Maybe that's true. I don't know if I want Elon Musk canceled, but these things, given his level of wealth and power, bring me pause. This is a really dangerous guy. The famous Nazi salute he gave at the inauguration.
Just waving.
Say what you will.
Heil, Heil, how you doing, Heil?
That picture gets shown over and over again. It's just a really disturbing. This is going to
Yeah.
be. He's not an elected official. This is somebody who's going to wield immense power now and greater power in the future, and over
Right.
consumer markets, over our government, everything we do. And to watch two go hand in hand it's a disturbing thing. Anyway,
If it makes you feel any better, probably won't. SpaceX's share prices were below their IPO debut today. They're at 148. I think it fully debuted at 150. So the bloom is off the rose, as they like to say in my family,
yeah.
to some extent. So we'll see. I mean, he's going to keep on adding stuff. He'll merge with Tesla, and that'll jack up the value again because the fanboys will continue to fanboy. And it's still a business that's burning $9 or $10 billion a year and not bringing in as much revenue. So, I mean, and there are those who say, look, there's a lot of challenges putting anything out in outer space. Never mind the latency of pulling stuff up to a satellite and then processing it in the deadness of space near absolute zero and sending it back down. That may or may not price out at quite what he's promising. So we'll see.
So you've summed up David Zaslav as kind of a shrill functionary, an administrative chief that
Financial
rep
engineer, Jack Welch, protege
more
who's
creative
living the dream.
destruction than creative building. Let's put it that way. How do you sum up Elon Musk? Similar terms or?
Well, you can say, look, he's had the vision to say this thing and this thing all can happen, and they interact in interesting ways, like the home power banks, the electric cars, the solar power. That was one of his first things. And then getting to electric cars that could also function as rolling power banks and let you change the way our grid works. Space, because he's fixated on going to Mars or sending somebody else to Mars, sending rockets up. But then what are they doing up there? They're dropping off satellites. So what are the satellites doing? Well, they're providing communications technologies. Well, linking those together is very smart. But he continually promises things that don't come close to what he said was going to happen when he said it was going to happen. It was last year we're going to have 1 million robo taxis on the streets by the end of the year. 1 million, the person says. Yes, 1 million. Not even close. He's got a few thousand. They haven't even gotten approvals to be able to run those things in lots of places, and they're
Yeah, he
well
talks
behind
about
others.
this idea that like satellites that, this web of satellites, solar powered, cooled by space, are ready to go now. it turns out they don't have the cooling down. You need radiators for that. There's no mechanism to take the heat off the satellite. And if
Right.
you do, if they're not pointed at the sun and heating, they have to be pointed down back at the earth. So the point is, it can probably be solved, but not now. And he was on
Mhm.
X doing a video segment last month, talking about it. It's basically something we could do tonight. It's like, no, you can't. It's a ways away.
Basically, except for the parts that they haven't figured out. So, he overpromises and has a lot of unfortunate impulses that are creepy and weird or destructive to a broader society. And that's just what it is. You get some good and some bad, like with most people, just his has more zeros attached to it in multiple meanings of that phrase. With that, I
So
think we
I'm
should
going
wrap
to
this
let's
puppy up.
a couple of events I want to highlight for us coming up. On July 22nd, the July 23rd issue, I should say, midweek, 2 weeks from today, we're going to have Tyler Dank, who's the co-founder and CEO of the platform on which we publish our newsletter, which is attracting a lot of attention these days through better revenue sharing terms. They're pulling off gobs of subscribers from Substack. People like us, Dave, big shot journalists.
So Dan's trying to create some buzz right now about our Beehive founders' appearance with us to talk stuff, which is cool. They like our thing.
Yeah, it's cool. Buzz. It's worth buzz. It's buzzworthy.
Buzz. It's worth buzz, but
Anyway,
not a buzz feed.
I'm excited about it, okay? Also,
Yeah.
we're getting ready to go to IBC, International Business Conference,
The International Broadcasting Conference, dude,
Broadcasting Conference. Of course,
where they do business,
sure,
billions of dollars in
a lot of acronyms
business.
out there for the old dude to keep in his noggin. But we'll be there doing show dailies, working with sponsors, handling the news flow, doing interviews, and otherwise being gadflies about Amsterdam. We'll have dates and travel plans and publishing plans to you soon. And also, our good friends at Looper Insights, our sponsors, are putting together a series of data taster sessions that I want you to be aware about. If you want to participate in these interesting 40-minute segments, virtual presentations of insights into merchandising visibility on a global scale for streaming, email us at daniel@nexttmt.com. David, sing us out.
Okay. Many thanks, as always, to our midweek partner, Media Play News, for helping us get out to as many of you all as possible. You can read our twice a week newsletter, Next TMT, as in technology, media, and telecom, at nexttmt.com. This here podcast, Next TMT Talks, is available on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and on Spotify and other places where
Wherever great
fine audio
podcasters sold.
fine audio engagement can be found. So you can get that there. With that, I will wrap this puppy up. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. We like comments, and we certainly like likes and shares and stuff. This is David Bloom with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, here saying over and